years.
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013 because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth walked into one of the most uncomfortable moments of his entire confirmation hearing when Senator Elizabeth Warren sat down across from him, laid 12 years of his own words on the table in front of him, and asked him one simple question that he could never find a clean answer to. And the exchange that followed is something every American who cares about who leads their military needs to see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Hegseth, thank you. Thank you for your service. So if you're confirmed as Secretary of Defense, you will oversee our military, including about 250,000 women who currently serve on active duty in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Space Forces, and the Marines. And I have serious concerns that your behavior toward women disqualifies you from serving in this role. Now, I've been trying to get answers from you for quite some time on this. You haven't wanted to meet or to answer any of my questions, so we'll just have to do it here and dive in. I want to pick up on some of the questions asked by Senators Shaheen and Gillibrand and Hirono, and I just want to make sure we have a list of some of the facts that I think are undisputed. I'm not going to talk about anonymous sources. I'm just going to quote you directly. We've got the video. We've got it in print. So going back to January 2013, you told a Fox News interviewer that women in the military simply couldn't measure up to men in the military, saying that allowing women to serve in combat roles would force the military to lower the bar. You picked up on that same theme in 2015, making remarks on Fox News, referring to women in combat as, quote, it would erode standards. June 2024, you said on Ben Shapiro's podcast, quote, women shouldn't be in combat at all. And then, of course, we've talked about it in 2024. You published a book, and you say on page 26 of your book, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units. Page 48 of your book, you claim that women should not be in combat roles because men are distracted by women. And then 10 weeks ago, you appeared on the Sean Ryan show and said, I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. Now, I presume you recall making all these statements?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the article you're pointing to in 2013, but it underscores my argument completely because in that 2013 argument, I was talking about standards.
No,
standards are what it's always been about,
Let's not
Senator.
have this same fight again.
Always been about Senate
I've quoted
standards.
you directly. We've got the video. We're happy to show it. But I want to be clear here. For 12 years, you were quite open about your views, and your views were consistently the same. Women are inferior soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and guardians. And in case anyone missed the point, and these are your words from 10 weeks ago, women absolutely straight up should not be permitted to serve in combat. And I notice on each of these quotes, those are said without qualification. It's not by how much you can lift or how fast you can run. They don't belong in combat, period, or your words, straight up. And then on November 9th, 2024, just 32 days after your last public comment saying that women absolutely should not be in combat, you declared that, quote, some of our greatest warriors are women, and you support having them serve in combat. Now, that is a very, very big about face in a very, very short period of time. So help me understand, Mr. Hegseth, what extraordinary event happened in that 32-day period that made you change the core values you had expressed for the preceding 12 years?
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013 because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. Where is the reference to standards? That they should be there if they can carry, if they can run? I don't see that at all, Mr. Hegseth. What I see is that there's a 32-day period in which you suddenly have another description about your views of women in the military. And I just want to know, what changed in the 32 days that the song you sang is not the song you come in here today to sing?
Senator, the concerns I have and the concerns that many have had, especially in ground combat units, is that in pursuit of certain percentages or quotas, standards have been changed. And that makes the combat more difficult
let me make a
for everybody
suggestion
involved.
about what happened in that 32 days. You got a nomination from President Trump. Now, I've heard of deathbed conversions, but this is the first time I've heard of a nomination conversion. And I hope you understand that many women serving in the military right now might think that if you can convert so rapidly your long-held and aggressively pursued views in just 32 days, that 32 days after you get confirmed, maybe you'll just reverse those views and go back to the old guy who said straight up, women do not belong in combat. Now, Mr. Hegseth, you have written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working for the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk to you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about because it's not
think about
one
it right
that,
now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job
I understand
has never
that. I
been
just
about
need
what
a
could
yes or no
conceivably
here.
come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the president
I'll
is.
bet you would.
Thank you.
What you just watched was not just a political argument. It was a very carefully planned takedown, and understanding how it was built tells you a lot about how Washington really works. Let us start with what Warren did first. Before Hegseth could even speak, she told him she was not using anonymous sources. She had the video. She had it in print. That one move took away his easiest escape route, which would have been to question where the information came from. She shut that door before he could walk toward it. That is not a coincidence. That is the move of someone who has done this before. Then she laid out a timeline. 2013, 2015, 2024, his book, his podcast, 10 weeks before the hearing. Each quote, one after another. The reason that matters is simple. One quote can be explained away, but 12 years of the same quote, said in different places, in different years, to different audiences, stops being a slip of the tongue. It becomes a belief. And the belief she showed was consistent, that women are not fit to serve in combat. Now look at how Hegseth tried to defend himself. Every single time she quoted him, he said the same thing. He said it was always about standards. That is called reframing, where you agree the words were said, but you try to change what they mean. The problem is Warren had already thought of that. She pointed out that none of his quotes mentioned standards. He never said women should not be in combat unless they cannot meet the physical bar. He said they should not be there. Full stop. Straight up. No conditions. His defense did not match his own words, and that gap was impossible to hide. The single most damaging moment of the entire clip was the 32-day question. Warren showed that on October 8th, Hegseth said women straight up should not be in combat. Then 32 days later, after getting Trump's nomination, he said some of our greatest warriors are women. She asked him a very simple question. What happened in those 32 days that changed 12 years of the same belief? He never answered it. Not once. He talked about standards. He talked about policy. He never answered the question. And in that silence, his biggest political problem lives. Warren answered the question for him. She said the nomination happened, and then she said something that will stay with anyone who watched it. She said she had heard of a deathbed conversion, but this was the first time she had heard of a nomination conversion. That line worked because it was simple, and it was honest. It said plainly that he did not change his mind because he grew. He changed his position because he needed the job. And then she raised the scariest thought for anyone watching. If he reversed 12 years of belief in 32 days to get the job, what is stopping him from reversing it again 32 days after he gets confirmed? She then moved to the second issue, the rule that senior military leaders should not go straight into jobs with defense contractors after they retire. Hegseth had publicly supported that rule. So she asked him a straight question. Will you follow that same rule when you leave? He said he would need to consult the president. She pointed out the obvious. He believes that rule should apply to generals, but he will not say it should apply to himself, even though he will be the one in charge of those generals. His answer about not being a general was technically true, but it made him look like someone using a loophole to escape a rule he publicly cheered for. From a media point of view, this clip spread because it has something very simple going on. One person came prepared, and the other person did not have good answers. That gap is what makes something watchable and shareable. Warren looks calm, ready, and exact. Hegseth looks like he is searching for solid ground and not finding it. Now, who wins from this moment depends on where you stand. If you were already worried about Hegseth, this clip tells you your worry was right. If you support him, you probably think Warren was just putting on a show for cameras. And there is some truth to that too, because confirmation hearings are always partly theater. But theater still requires answers, and the answers were not there. The people watching most closely were probably the 250,000 women currently serving in the U.S. military. Because the man who could not explain a 32-day reversal is now the man responsible for their careers. So here is the question I want to leave you with. Do you think Hegseth genuinely changed his mind in those 32 days? Or do you think he said what he needed to say to get the job? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you want more breakdowns like this, where we just look at the words, the tactics, and what is really at stake, hit subscribe. We do not take anyone's word for it. We just show you what happened.